Well, class, we are making great time through the annals of church history. And in this particular lecture, lecture 14, we are moving into Eastern Orthodoxy and Thomas Aquinas, or Aquinas. The Great Schism has happened. East and West have developed along distinct theological paths. On the Eastern side, there's been an emphasis on continuity with the early church, with that worship and preserving that. On the Western side, it's developed into more of not so much a need to preserve this ancient connection, but it's more of we need to explain what we believe. So the Eastern, maybe more mysticism, is being contrasted with more of the Western scholasticism. And so there's the church is in two halves, but both are continuing to move forward. They're not arguing over who's right or wrong for the next several hundred years. They're just, okay, this has happened. Let's move forward. So in our last lecture, we ended with a divided church, but division is not the end of the story. It's similar to Paul and Barnabas, and the dissension between the two became so strong that they separated, and Barnabas took John Mark, off they went. Paul took Silas, off they went. They didn't sit and argue about it. They just said, well, I feel really strongly about this. If we need to separate, okay, but hey, let's keep serving Jesus. And so what you see in that microcosm of the Paul-Barnabas moment, I think we can see it played out here as well. Each are going to continue to develop, and they're each going to develop and emphasize different strengths. So let's break it down to four major parts, and we'll try to keep this moving. I've tried in the last lecture, and I'm going to try in this one to try to give back some of the time. I know in the previous module, we had some pretty dense lectures, and so trying to be cognizant of that as we move into this one. Eastern Orthodoxy, part one, Eastern Orthodoxy, preserving the ancient faith. I think we can be guilty sometimes of caricaturizing Eastern Orthodoxy. Sometimes maybe our caricatures are because we are afraid somebody that's under our influence will go explore it, and we don't want them to explore it. Sometimes because we haven't done our homework. Now, do I believe with the Eastern Orthodox religion? Well, if I did, this would probably be called Veritas Eastern Orthodox Baptist or Eastern Orthodox College. I'm a Baptist through and through. But I don't want to be guilty of just caricatures. Do we have our differences? Absolutely. Strong differences. But what I want to say in this particular lecture is that if you were to ask an Eastern Orthodox believer, what are your distinguishing marks? What separates you from the Western church? I wouldn't even say Protestantism, Baptist, or Catholicism, just the Western church. What do you see as the distinguishing marks? I believe they would highlight four areas. The first area, icons. Icons. For the Eastern church, these are windows that tell a story. They're not idols. That's what they would tell you. These do not violate the second commandment. These aren't graven images. They're not worshipped. They're telling a story. There has already been 2 rounds of the iconoclastic controversy even before the Great Schism. But now that the churches are divided, there's no need to try to play nice with each other. The Eastern churches are leaning into their position on the icons. John of Damascus lived 675 to 749, again, several centuries before the Great Schism. He lived outside the Byzantine area. Where he lived was under Muslim rule. And he wrote some of the strongest defenses of icons. Now, I don't buy the arguments, but I'm okay to say he gave some good arguments. This was a central argument. In the Old Testament, God couldn't be pictured because he had not yet become visible. But now God has become flesh in Jesus Christ. And depicting Christ on our stained glasses honors the reality of the incarnation. That was the argument. Okay, yeah, in the second century, I'm sorry, in the second commandment, obviously no graven images because God had not revealed himself in fleshly form yet. And so that was the argument. In the Second Council of Nicaea, this is now 787 AD, they agreed with these basic arguments of John. And they created two key words that you will sometimes hear Orthodox believers use. There is worship, or latria, and this is due to God alone. And then there's veneration, what they would call proskinesis. This would be veneration. This is honor. This is not worship. This is honor given to icons and to the people that they represent. That distinction of the icons remains important in Eastern Orthodoxy today. Now, as Baptists, we generally conclude that the use of religious images in worship is unwise, that it carries genuine dangers. We recognize that the defenders of icons sincerely distinguish between worshiping an image and venerating what it represented. But in our minds, sometimes it seems like we're playing fast and loose with semantics. We're making a category of veneration that's just one step below worship. And we just have caution about it. Second area that if you were to ask a Orthodox believer what he would say distinguishes him, he would lean into the liturgy, the liturgical worship. It feels ancient. It is continuity with the apostolic church. It's mystery. It's reverence. And they would be very, very uncomfortable in a modern expression of worship. The third area that would probably come up is this word theosis. Probably the most important concept, and I want to explain it carefully so that I don't mischaracterize a branch of people who would claim the Christian faith. It's easy to see this word and to hear it explained and almost get a Mormon view that, wow, these people believe they're going to become their own gods. They would never say that. They use language sometimes that gives that impression, but it's not what they mean. I'm trying to be fair here. What they mean by it is really growing into Christ likeness. They call it participation in God's life, and they have a Bible verse. Look, 2 Peter 1:4, whereby are given unto us exceeding great and precious promises, that by these ye might be partakers of the divine nature. That's what they're saying right there. Theosis is the partaking of the divine nature. As Baptists, we have no problem affirming progressive sanctification, but I think we try to word it a lot more carefully than what sometimes is represented by this idea of theosis. So for Eastern Orthodox, icons, liturgy, theosis, the final one is authority. For Eastern Orthodox, it's scripture, it's traditions, it's counsel. It's just not scripture alone. Let me give you a quick summary of part one. As Baptists, we can appreciate the Eastern Orthodox emphasis on reverence. We can appreciate their emphasis on historical continuity. We can appreciate the fact they're serious about worship. No problem saying those compliments. As Baptists, we have questions. Icons. They just often look like images or statues or window dressing. The issue of authority is big. We see it fleshed out in the Reformation about 300 years from this time that we're talking about right now with the sola scriptura. And then tradition. Let's move to part two. Thomas Aquinas, faith-seeking understanding. Thomas lived 1225 to 1274, probably one of the most influential theologians in the history of the Christian church. He's on the western side of things. He's born into an Italian noble family, wealth, privilege. His relatives expect him to pursue a prestigious political career or even buying offices in the ecclesiastical world. He chose to join the Dominican order. That decision was so unpopular with his family that they put him under house arrest for a whole year trying to change his mind. His commitment never wavered. He devoted the rest of his life to teaching, to preaching, to writing, to helping Christians think carefully about faith. He's one of the leading voices in that Western scholasticism and really one of the defining thinkers of Western Christianity. I think probably his greatest contribution was his conviction that the Christian faith deserves careful, disciplined thought. His opus magnum, his magnus opus, his great work, his life work, was the Summa Theologica. And there he sought to organize the entire Christian doctrine into a coherent and systematized whole. He didn't just list questions. He asked questions. He raised objections. He examined scripture. He interacted with earlier church fathers and leaders. And then he carefully reasoned line upon line with logic from that Roman education. He leaned into that, showing his conclusions. Faith-seeking understanding. That was sort of what his phrase was known for. As Baptists, we appreciate him embracing the ability to love the Lord with not only his heart, but with his mind. Thankful for that. Do we agree with all of his theology? No. I don't even agree with all my theology half the time. Okay. We would disagree with his sacramental theology. We would disagree with his understanding of church authority and the primacy of Peter's see. We would probably take even some issue with his teaching of grace and merit. But it'd be a mistake to say there's nothing we can't appreciate. We are thankful that he helped the church to embrace the difference with faith. Faith doesn't work against reason. And you can even see that his influence affected one of the great apologists of our day, William Lane Craig. His apologetic website is Reasonable Faith. He would, like Aquinas, say that faith isn't a leap into the dark. It isn't an abandonment of reason because you just have to have faith. There was this belief that both could work in tandem. All right, part 3. Two different strengths. The Eastern Orthodoxy, emphasizing preserve the ancient way. Western scholasticism, explain these truths. Eastern Orthodoxy, worship, the main thing. Eastern Orthodoxy, Western Catholicism, scholasticism, reason. We need to hold on to this mystery. We don't need to define everything. We need to define everything. We need community and continuity with the ancient church. We need systems. We need to systematize these beliefs. We need liturgy. We need the university. None of these are wrong. They're just different sets of strengths. And because of the split, they weren't sharing these strengths with one another. They were growing further and further apart. Neither side balanced their strengths perfectly, just like we're never in perfect balance. But we see the principles here. The Eastern Orthodoxy had a legitimate concern. We need to preserve the faith. Potential drift, though, is that their traditions sometimes resisted change. Western Christianity had a legitimate concern. We need to understand the faith and make it understandable. Potential drift, though, was that reason could could potentially govern revelation instead of being the servant to it. All right, part 4, preparing for the Reformation. So you see, we're building to something. We're building to something. We're not quite ready for Luther. We're not quite ready for some of these other guys. We're getting closer to Wycliffe and Huss. You can sort of see that there's this unrest in the church, and there's these questions that's still unanswered. And here's the major question that needs to be answered. What is the church's final authority? What do we believe? That's important. It's not the most important. What did Aquinas teach? Sure, important, but not the most important. The most important question that needs to be solved is, what settles the dispute if the East and West are in dispute? What authority settles it? Is it this patriarch excommunicating that pope? Is it this pope excommunicating that patriarch? What settles it? And so as universities multiplied and as scriptures became more available, as scholars compared church practices with ancient scripture, the questions multiplied. God would use those questions, prepare Egypt, prepare Europe for great change. When I think about 3 takeaways from this lecture, Eastern Orthodoxy is preserving the historic faith through worship, tradition, and continuity. Good. In the West, Thomas Aquinas demonstrates that Christian truth deserves careful intellectual engagement. Great. Takeaway 3, tradition and reason remain valuable servants, but dangerous masters when separated from Scripture. I'll see you in the next lecture, and let's get ready to talk about that morning light, the morning dawn, if you will, of the Reformation. I'll see you in the next lecture.